We now know that the Russian operatives who perpetrated these schemes did not have the cooperation of President Trump or the Trump campaign.
A full day of breaking news out of Washington, D.C. The full redacted Mueller report is finally out. It's being scoured by teams of people from both sides of the aisle. CBS 2's national correspondents in Washington, D.C. have been keeping an eye on Capitol Hill since this morning's release. Investigative reporter James Rosen is standing by with a deep dive into the Mueller report. But first, Chief Political Correspondent Scott Thuman has the reaction from both the president and his critics.
Well, the initial summary report was just 4 pages long. This is 448 with large sections that are redacted. But what is still in here is plenty.
No collusion, no obstruction. There never was, by the way, and there never will be.
The president essentially claiming victory Thursday at an event for wounded warriors, alongside his tweet, "For the haters and the radical left Democrats, game over." That after the Attorney General's news conference backing the president.
After nearly 2 years of investigation, thousands of subpoenas, hundreds of warrants, and witness interviews, the special counsel confirmed that the Russian government sponsored efforts to illegally interfere with the 2016 presidential election, but did not find that the Trump campaign or other Americans colluded in those efforts.
Democrats instantly reacted too, calling it all partisan, spin, and accused Attorney General Barr of protecting his boss. But delivered to the House and Senate Judiciary Committees was also insight. When Trump first learned of the special counsel appointment, according to notes by the Attorney General's chief of staff, the president slumped back in his chair and said, "Oh my God, this is terrible. This is the end of my presidency. I'm expletive." As for obstruction, Mueller indicated the president tried but failed, saying his efforts to influence the investigation were mostly unsuccessful, but that is largely because the persons who surrounded the president declined to carry out orders. While there are still investigations on the Hill and the controversy isn't going away soon either, Trump indicated, is he.
Well, this is really beautiful. This will find a permanent place, at least for 6 years, in the Oval Office. Is that okay?
Critics, though, will still point to that summary on obstruction, where Mueller wrote that the report doesn't conclude the president committed a crime, but it also doesn't exonerate him. In Washington, I'm Scott Thuman.
Now, it was widely expected that the Mueller report would feature 3 main sections. Yet CBS 2's investigative reporter James Rosen tells us one of those sections never materialized.
To close observers of the work of special counsel Robert Mueller, the most striking aspect of his nearly 500-page final report, now public in redacted form, may be what wasn't in it at all.
It was a counterintelligence investigation.
And that fact led many Trump critics to predict the Mueller report would address whether the president is effectively being blackmailed by the Kremlin. Georgetown law professor Martin Lederman wrote in the Washington Post, Mueller's primary charge in particular is to ascertain the nature and extent of the Russian threat. This naturally includes assessing whether, how, and to what extent Trump is compromised or is otherwise unable to perform his constitutional duties on behalf of the nation when it comes to matters involving Russia. Yet the Mueller report contains no material whatsoever about alleged compromise on the president.
The president took no act that in fact deprived the special counsel of the documents and witnesses necessary to complete his investigation.
But the Mueller report states, quote, President Trump engaged in efforts to curtail the special counsel's investigation and prevent the disclosure of evidence to it, including through public and private contacts with potential witnesses.
The president probably has the power to end the investigation under the unified executive. It's still difficult to find where the line into constitutionally permissible criminal conduct by the president was crossed.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
That remark, perhaps half in jest, was taken seriously in Moscow, where 5 hours later, according to the Mueller report, hackers working for Unit 26165 of the GRU, Russian military intelligence, already successful in compromising Democratic National Committee servers, targeted Hillary Clinton's personal office for the first time. After candidate Trump's remarks, the report states Unit 26165 created and sent malicious links targeting 15 email accounts linked to Secretary Clinton. It is unclear how the GRU was able to identify these email accounts, which were not public. One redacted passage concerned an allegation involving former President Clinton and the Kremlin. This information was conveyed to Jared Kushner in 2016, but the president's son-in-law later told the FBI it couldn't be operationalized. In Washington, James Rosen.
Idaho's congressional delegation is responding to the report's release. Senator Mike Crapo says special counsel Robert Mueller's thorough two-year investigation included more than 500 search warrants, 2,800 subpoenas, 40 Federal Bureau of Investigation agents, and 500 witnesses. Since no credible evidence supports charges of collusion or conspiracy with the Kremlin, I am ready to move on from this drawn-out attack on the president. Senator Jim Risch wrote, "For me, there was no news in Mueller's report. We have reviewed thousands of documents, including dozens of witness statements throughout the Senate Intelligence Committee's investigation, and I reached the same conclusion as Mueller, that President Trump did not collude with the Russians." And here's more from Representative Mike Simpson. Today's release of the Mueller report marks the final day in a process that has dominated national discourse for 2 years. At last, the American people can know without a shadow of a doubt that the Trump campaign did not collude with foreign governments. Now, Representative Russ Fulcher has scheduled an interview with us for later tonight. He'll be joining us live, in fact, on the phone on CBS 2 News at 5:30. Once again, parts of the Mueller report were redacted. Barr told members of Congress that he would make as much public as possible, but would redact sections based on 4 criteria: grand jury information, classified information, material about ongoing investigations, and material affecting peripheral third parties. Barr emphasized that a team made up of Justice Department attorneys and representatives of the intelligence community decided on the redactions. He had no hand in it. Reaction continues to pour in as more people go through the released documents. Tonight, we'll continue to cover the Mueller report and what's next for Congress and the president. All you have to do to head to idahonews.com in between newscasts if you want an in-depth look at the report. Now let's go to our national question of the day. Now that the Mueller report has been released, do you think the president obstructed justice? Head to idahonews.com to vote. Very simple to do. You just hover your cursor over the News tab in the top left corner of the home screen, then you'll see that drop-down menu down there in the blue section. Second column, question of the day. Click on that and you can tell us what you think. We will read the results a little later.